Welcome to Straight from the Source with Haley Watson. Our guest this week is Adam Silver, who is the FPPC Chair, Fair Political Practices Committee, for those of you. Did I say it right? Or did I commission?
You almost nailed it.
Close enough.
My parents sometimes think I work at the SPCA. They can't
Right?
get that acronym right, so don't feel bad at all.
I've gotten in trouble before for those sort of things, the acronyms where it's like, we think we know what they mean, but do we really?
Right.
So this is educational for not just all of our listeners, but for me as well, right? This is a job that you've been in this role for 2 years now, right? And before that, I mean, you've been in ethics. You are a lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. How did you decide that, you know, keeping people on the straight and narrow was going to be your path in life?
Well, first, I know exactly how long I've been in this job because I started right when my son was born.
Oh,
so I've been in about 22 months and about a week.
Okay.
So yeah, I was still taking ethics questions from the assembly while I was driving to Kaiser.
Which job has been harder?
That's a good question. They're very different, right?
Yeah.
When you're the ethics advisor, which is my job before this to the state assembly,
right,
you're always on call.
Right.
Right? There's always questions, situations that are coming up, and the assembly members, they want to make sure that they're above reproach.
Yeah.
Right? They want to make sure that they're not only complying with the law, but they're going beyond it. So there's not even kind of a question as to whether they're acting unethical.
Right.
So there's that kind of commitment, but as FPPC chair, you're running one of the most important agencies in the state of California.
Yeah.
We're critical to public trust.
Right.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're both high pressure jobs, but really rewarding.
Well, and you know, I was asking also which job is harder, like that or being a father.
That's so
and
funny.
you are kind of dealing with ethics in that too,
Yeah.
right? And high pressure and always on call. So.
Oh, I'd say being FPPC chair is way harder. I love being a father. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this, but the Oakland A's moved to Sacramento. Mm-hmm. And this past season, me and my son have gone, we went to 8 or 9 games. He just loves it. He's such a good guy. He sleeps at night. He does all the things that, you know, people told me weren't going to actually happen. So, yeah, FPPC chair, that's way harder. I just enjoy being a dad. Once we have a second kid, I'm probably going to say being a dad's way harder than being chair.
Yeah, we'll see. You're just entering the terrible twos, right? So
there you go. That's fair.
I have a 2.5-year-old nephew. He's just starting to push my sister a little bit. He's still the cutest thing in the world, but yeah. The challenges are increasing just a little bit at this age.
There you go.
Okay, so yeah, in fact, just one of my last guests was Assemblywoman Heather Hadwick. And this is something I always ask people when they come on to this show and we get to chat. When you think about politicians, right, I think that a lot of people, just the average person like me, might think, oh, politicians, you know, they're all corrupt and it must just be everywhere at Capitol Hill, like people, you know, making side deals and stuff. And so I ask every politician, like, how do you kind of stay on the straight and narrow? And she was telling me about how, well, like, whether or not your moral compass require that or not, there are just so many rules. Like every piece of chocolate she eats at a dinner or something, she's got to write up a report about it. And that's part of your job, right?
Yeah, that was a big part of my job when I was advising, you know, her fellow assembly members, and that's a big part of my job here at the FPPC.
Yeah.
And the reality is the vast majority of public officials in the state of California, they want to follow the law. They don't want to go to prison.
Right.
I think, I hope I get this number right, but in LA County, you had 5 different public officials get sentenced for criminal violations, for criminal ethics violations.
Oh, wow.
They're going to spend time in jail.
Yeah.
So that really scares public officials.
Right.
So they want to comply with this law. But of course, there's going to be 1 or 2, what have you, public officials who just feel like they're above the law. And it's our job to identify those folks and really go after them hard. And we have done that.
So these 5 people is this in the past year or so?
It's probably in the past 5 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are these things where it was kind of like, oh, shoot, we overlooked something, or you saw intentional corruption?
No, if you're talking about a criminal prosecution, that's going to be intentional corruption.
Right.
That's going to be quid pro quo. Like basically, you know, I'll vote this way on this bill if you give me $1,000.
Right.
It's actually pretty unbelievable how low the amount can be sometimes. But yeah, that's the sort of situation you're seeing. Perhaps you'll see perjury, right? So a lot of times the feds or DA won't be able to get you on, you know, bribery or extortion, but they catch you lying to them. And so they'll go after them for that sort of thing.
It's interesting how this all really, it plays into public trust. And there's something like we don't have an FPPC necessarily keeping an eye on us as reporters. There are other regulatory agencies, but I always tell my people, like, hey, say you go do a story about there was like a break-in at the donut shop, right? And you interview the owner, and she just thinks that you're really kind and nice and offers you some donuts to bring back. I always say you got to say no. You can't take it because it could be seen as, hey, we're painting her in a certain light because she gave us a gift, right? Now, while that's a little bit different because we're not elected officials, taxpayer dollars aren't paying our salaries, but I feel like it can probably start small like that for a lot of people who break the rules. Like, it seems so innocent in the beginning, and then maybe it just kind of evolves.
Right, and it's that appearance of a conflict of interest. It's that appearance of corruption.
Right.
Right, and that's why you tell your staff not to accept that donut, not because they're going to change their coverage because they're getting a free donut, right? But once we lose the public's trust that's been built over decades, it's so hard to get that back.
Yeah.
So I really try to emphasize that in the legislation we pursue when I'm advising folks that you don't want to even get close to the line. It's not worth it.
So when you're talking about legislation that you're pursuing, is there anything in the works right now that you're trying to get across?
Yeah, so what I think would be particularly relevant to people here in Chico and Butte County is our 2025 legislative package, and then I can talk a little bit more about what we're pursuing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this past year, we were tremendously successful with legislation, and that's because I think we took a common sense approach to all the bills that we pursued. We really wanted to make sure that the law reflected the expectations of the public. So if we went to downtown Chico right now and said, hey, do you think that it would be okay or permissible for a special interest to plop a campaign check down on the desk of the mayor in City Hall? Is that okay? Do you think it would be permissible for a foreign national who is otherwise prohibited for making contributions to a ballot measure committee to circumvent that prohibition just by stepping foot in California?
Right.
They'd say, no way.
Right.
That sounds illegal. That's unethical. And up until this year, both those things were permissible in a lot of circumstances. And those are some examples of the legislation that's going to impact people in Chico, people in Butte County, because that sort of activity is not going to be permissible anymore.
So right now, just in terms of, we're in campaign season, it seems like we always are, right? When it comes to spending and campaign financing, like, what are some of just the key major rules? Like, how much can say a big business that was here, Sierra Nevada, maybe they wanted something to happen and they wanted to spend $1 million to support a candidate who aligned with them. Is there a cap on spending, or is it just it has to be disclosed?
That's a great question. If we had about 4 hours, I could walk you through all those complex rules. But what's great about us is, so we serve in a prosecutorial role, right? But we're also an educator. We're there to provide the public with all the information they need to keep public officials accountable.
Yeah.
And for public officials to understand what the rules are so
Right.
they can avoid unintentional violations.
Right.
So what I'd recommend is if you have someone in the public, someone who's watching, who's concerned that illegal activity might be occurring, they can go straight on our website. We have manuals, FAQs, fact sheets that they can review. They can see the specific contribution limits that are placed on their different officials, because it could be different for your city council member versus your county supervisor versus your assembly member, right? And they can educate themselves, and then if they see a violation, we strongly encourage them to go to our complaint portal and file a complaint.
Could there ever be a world where, like, campaign spending just wasn't a thing? Like, where it was, like, just maybe such a small amount, or maybe just, like, hey, each candidate, like, we try to do something where commercials, that's different, right? But in my news programming, like, I let every candidate come be on this podcast. They get 45 minutes, and then they can do a 90-second statement. It's free. We don't charge for it, and it's offered to everybody across the board, and that's it. There's nothing more for anyone.
Right.
Like, is there any way to get around whoever has the most money always seems to win everything?
I'd say if we were in a different country, maybe we could have a system like that. But right now, the way the Supreme Court's interpreted the First Amendment, it would be very difficult to have that sort of restriction in the political process. But what I think is great is that you have really strong transparency rules in California.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, once we get close to the election, you're talking about disclosure of major contributions and expenditures within 24 hours. So long as the public, wants to look up that information, they can go straight on the Secretary of State's website and look up that stuff.
And it doesn't cost money, right? Because there's so many times, like for our reporters, when we're trying to get information, and whether it's like a freedom of information request or public records, it's like you got to pay money too, which seems a little bit unfair if it's public information, because not everybody has money.
That's a good point. And yes, it is free.
Yeah.
And more we're moving to providing all that information online in a really accessible, intuitive way.
Yeah.
That, again, doesn't cost any money.
Okay.
So we're about to launch, what's really cool is this Form 700 search. And what a Form 700 is a financial disclosure that all public officials have to file. I have to file it as the chair of the FPPC. And it discloses all the things that I have an interest in, right? If I own stock of Microsoft, I have to disclose it on there. My spouse's income, I have to disclose her employer on there, people that I receive gifts from. And unlike the past where you could just download the form itself, we're going to allow for keyword searches. You're going to be able to search Microsoft and Chico or Microsoft and Butte County, and you're going to be able to see every single official that owns Microsoft. And why is that relevant? Well, potentially either the county or the city might be contracting with Microsoft on a tech package. And that would be a potential conflict of interest. And then at that point, the public can get out there, file a complaint, and then we can pursue it.
Okay. Is it hard to track spending now that there are so many different types of money, right? There's cash donations, there's so many different digital things, cryptocurrency being another one. How do you kind of work around all of that?
That's a great question. So we have to pay attention to what trends are and get ahead of them. So we noticed that people were attempting to make cryptocurrency contributions. So we adopted regulations and pursued legislation that made it so that we could handle it in a way that's clear and transparent for the public. And what we do, of course, you should double check your campaign manual before going ahead and doing this. Don't just take my advice. But basically, when somebody receives crypto, for example, they have to sell that holding immediately and turn it into cash.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about trying to track down who's the ultimate source of this currency. Whether they're providing, cash, check, cryptocurrency, it's going to be very clear to the public who's making those contributions. And if it's not, then we're going to go after them.
Right.
We levied a $1 million fine against several different LLCs who were funneling money into California elections and attempting to avoid disclosing who the actual source of that money was.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting, the FPPC, it hasn't been around for really all that long, right? I mean, Watergate era is what started this all. What do you think has changed since before that time to now? I mean, do you think that really we've seen some major impacts, or is there still so much work to be done?
I think it's both. I think we've seen tremendous impact in terms of how people campaign and how they conduct themselves in public and in private. I mean, Watergate was a pretty significant scandal. We've seen a lot of scandals since then. And what you see every time is when there's a scandal, you get more campaign finance, stricter campaign finance rules, stricter ethics rules.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So our job, similarly to kind of cryptocurrency like we talked about earlier, is to pay attention to these trends. And one trend that we're seeing a bunch is the use of AI.
Right.
And we don't want to stop people from using AI. We don't want to stop people from using Photoshop or any other, tool that allows people who don't have a lot of resources to be able to run for office. We just want to make sure they're not doing it in a way that deceives or misleads the public. But we also can't violate the First Amendment. So we're kind of walking that tight thread, that tightrope, to make sure that we're allowing people to participate in the political process, while at the same time making sure that the public knows what's going on.
The whole AI thing, to me, it's unbelievable, for one thing. I was so against it at first, right? And then I decided, okay, I'm going to start using ChatGPT, because that's what everybody, my colleagues, other news directors say, you need to start using it. You need to stay with the times, right? And you need to learn this. It's a tool. It's the future. But it kind of blows my mind, like when it comes to intellectual property for us. Like if we were to ask my good friend ChatGPT to create an image for me, like maybe the image you see behind us. Normally, this is creative services. That's somebody's job to use a program that we pay for to make a graphic. I can just ask ChatGPT to do it, and technically, that's my property, which blows my mind. Yeah. How, in terms of when it comes to politicians and for campaigning and using artificial intelligence. How could that potentially be misused, and what is okay that kind of surprises you?
Well, it's so weird. There's never been an issue that at the same time keeps me up at night and gets me so excited.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many potential use cases for people with nefarious intent, people who want to muck up the process. They
Right.
want to see the world burn, right?
Right.
One thing that I could think of is, I don't know how closely you track the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively situation.
Not too closely, but I was
Okay, I bet you didn't think I was going to bring that up.
No, I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, so as I understand it, one of the issues there is they were paying bots, fake social media accounts, to post
Yeah.
a bunch of posts putting Blake in a negative light.
Right.
And I saw that, and instead of thinking about Us Weekly and all the entertainment implications, I was thinking how this is going to be used in a political context.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have people creating AI bots that can sound just like a human being and calling into legislative offices and saying, hey, my name is Joe Smith, I live in Watsonville, and I strongly support AB 55. Right? And it's going to be very difficult to discern whether that's a human being or not.
Right.
And that's going to cause all sorts of issues in the system. So we want to make sure, if that's going to happen, that there's strong disclaimer requirements, right? That we prohibit it where it's appropriate.
Right.
And then that we make sure that there's a way for us to identify that sort of activity. So it's really tricky. But on the good side, I mean, there's just a million different ways that we can use it. And we're a small agency. We're only 100 people.
Right.
And we have the entire state of California. So we have governor, attorney general. We also have Chico city council members, Butte county supervisors. They're all under our jurisdiction.
Right.
So most of our cases come from complaints. People are telling us about what stuff's going on because we just can't send out a bunch of people through California to investigate. We can use AI to review all the documents that get filed, see different patterns, potential violations, and then act on that and hold people accountable who we really didn't have a chance to in the past.
So can you just kind of like filter through the information a lot quicker than a person who's actually reading every single document?
Correct.
Do you trust it? Because sometimes I only work with ChatGPT, and I've used Grok as well, but I mean, it hallucinates, right?
It does.
So how much do you trust it?
I trust it about as much as I would trust an intern.
Okay.
And we have good interns at the FPPC. I love our interns.
Yeah.
Right? But they don't have that much experience with
Right.
the body of law that we work with.
Yeah.
Right? They're when they're doing proactive investigations for us, they're reviewing reports and they're looking to see, hey, it looks like this person owns Facebook, and it looks like they voted on some sort of plan that dealt with Facebook. We think this might be a violation. They send it to an investigator. So there's always going to be a human in the loop.
Right.
Right? So you have AI just run through text, essentially, identify whether this text appears in this text, and they say, hey, investigator, we've identified a potential situation where there might be a conflict. We want you, the expert, to take a look at this.
Okay.
So I definitely don't trust it to be a prosecutor. I don't trust it to be an educator, but I do trust it to be like a TA or an intern. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So for people who might have a suspicion, say, oh, I think I saw my city council member, talking to the president of Chick-fil-A at dinner the other night at the local restaurant. And I don't know, I heard some things that sounded a little fishy. What is their first step in getting to you, essentially?
That's a great question. So they can go to our website, which is fppc.ca.gov. And I would recommend starting with some of our educational materials. So if they're considering, they think there was a campaign violation, look at our campaign materials. If they think there's an issue with lobbying or gifts, look at our ethics and lobbying materials. And if they think there's a potential violation, they should go to our complaint portal and they should file a complaint. And how that's going to work is they're going to be prompted to provide all the information that we're going to need to evaluate whether there's a violation that falls under our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Because we don't have jurisdiction over everything. We have jurisdiction over a very narrow group of violations, right? So Brown Act, those sorts of things, that doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. But a lot of other things do. So we get the information necessary to make that evaluation, right? And then if we end up opening an investigation, they're going to be notified and they're going to be able to track the progress of our investigation. And ultimately, if there's a violation, we're going to prosecute it either administratively through a fine, like we talked about, that $1 million fine. We could do civilly, so we could force somebody to disclose or file something that they haven't filed yet. or we could work with the Butte County DA or the
Yeah.
Attorney General's office or the feds on prosecuting that person.
Do you ever come across like privacy issues? Because yeah, when somebody says they're going to run for office, like you know that your life is all your personal stuff will no longer be personal. But at the same time, like a text I sent on my private cell phone to someone, I would think that that would be private. But you, if a claim is made, would essentially get access to that sort of stuff, right?
That's a good question. So I do. I've dealt with those situations personally, right? So when I was the advisor back in the assembly, I'd have staff who they didn't make very much money. They were there because they're just really passionate on both sides, so Republicans and Democrats. And they would have to, in a lot of cases, disclose their personal residence on their Form 700.
Right.
So if somebody got upset that they didn't get whatever service that they expected to get, they could go to that person's home and hassle them or worse. So I worked, as soon as I became chair, I worked with some legislators to make a change in the law that allowed folks to redact that personal information so people wouldn't be able to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Now, you, before you were in this role, you were an attorney, right? A prosecutor?
Uh-huh.
In your current role, are you ever in the courtrooms anymore? Are you the one that takes it to the final stage of, you know, trying someone in court?
I'm not. It's incredibly tempting. I love that work. Our executive director has to come in every now and then and tell me I'm not the prosecutor.
Right.
I'm actually firewalled off from everything in the enforcement division.
Oh, interesting.
So as much as I'd love to be involved in specific cases and how we pursue, they actually don't get to me till there's a settlement.
Okay.
So complaint comes in, investigation starts. I'm aware of complaints that are coming in just like every other member of the public.
Yeah.
But I don't know how the investigation's going, negotiations for settlement. Once the settlement comes, then it goes up to the commission. And me and 4 other commissioners, we vote on whether to accept the settlement or send it back for a more increased or decreased fine.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like that there should be some sort of firewall for me, right? Because I started here as a reporter and like an investigative reporter. That's my passion, right?
Right.
And somehow as news director, it's like, well, I technically shouldn't be spending my days doing that. I should be running the news department, but I'll just come in at 6 a.m. and do a little reporting then or whatever because
It's so tempting.
I know. I mean, just really getting your hands on the work and being out there in the field. I mean, that's what always really drove me, and I'm so glad that there are people who are doing that important work and getting out into the communities.
Me too. And we just have such incredible staff at the FPPC.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky to get former law enforcement, people from the FBI as investigators. So it's amazing. And I get to scratch that itch a little bit because I'm working on all these AI projects. So I'm creating the tools myself that our enforcement division can then use to solve some of these cases.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Sure, just like I laid out for you. So, you know, we get all those Form 700s that have all the economic interests, all the investments and sources of income that public officials have. So what you can do right now is you can upload that information into a model, like an AI model, and then it cross-references all those with the agendas for local jurisdictions to identify whether there's a potential conflict of interest.
Got it.
And whenever that's found, gets sent to an investigator, and then they can go investigate it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm not involved in the actual identifying of the violations, just the technology piece. But that can be used in so many different contexts. And the great thing about it, too, is it's not only about prosecuting people, but it's about flagging potential violations. It's kind of like Minority Report. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Tom Cruise where they try to stop people or arrest people before they commit.
Thought police thing, yeah.
Yeah. So if we look at the agendas prospectively of each one of these local jurisdictions and compare them to Form 700s, this data that we have, we can say, hey, we see a potential conflict of interest for you. Just want to let you know you shouldn't vote on it.
Right.
So that's kind of where we see all this going.
If you kind of get caught before it actually happens, unlike Minority Report, right, you're kind of saving somebody from themselves.
Absolutely. They haven't violated the law, so they're good.
Yeah. All right. How is money and staffing for you? Do you feel like you have the resources? I know that money's kind of tight everywhere right now.
Yeah. If the governor's office and the legislature wanted to give us more resources, we would welcome it.
Yeah.
But the reality is there is a budget crunch across California, and we really need to focus on ways that we can still keep up efficiency and serve our mission. One of those ways is using emerging technology.
Yeah, okay. Do you feel like in your role, because you are tasked with essentially upholding people's moral compass to a certain degree, Do you ever feel like this extra responsibility just in your personal life, just, to be, on the straight and narrow? I keep saying that, but, not to be unethical ever.
Well, it's a pretty high standard to live
I
by.
know, but you have, if you're going to be the boss of it, right? You got to
That's
set
true.
the example for us.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding there. So the same standard that I hold the assembly members to, I hold myself to,
Yeah.
right? I don't even create the appearance of a potential violation or conflict of interest.
Right.
Right. And also, more so than just violations, I don't want to create even the appearance of partisanship. Right. I hope that from this interview that we did, no one can tell whether I'm a Democrat or Republican or independent.
Right.
And that's how I held myself at the assembly, where I was the legal advisor to Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
Typically, if you have people who are competing, they're not going to want to have the same attorney,
Yeah.
but they are comfortable having me. I can tell you I'm a pretty boring social media read because of my position.
Yeah.
I'm basically just liking posts related to the Sacramento Kings and movies.
Right.
So, yeah, that's probably the biggest impact. There's no political discussions
It's
on
so
any of my social media.
Funny how so many different things that you wouldn't think would be political are associated with politics these days.
Yeah.
Like I've been a vegetarian since I was in first grade, and I remember back when I was a reporter, I think I posted something about that, and my news director told me, "Oh, that could be seen. A lot of the ranchers and whatever around here might think that that's like a left-leaning post." And I laughed and I said, "Oh, my hunter husband would beg to differ. He knows that, whatever. I just think the cow's cute." But we do have to be careful. People, especially when you're in a position to be holding someone of a political party accountable, you really can't be seen as playing favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not fair.
Yeah, because people need to trust you. You're upholding public trust, but if they don't trust you, then what's the job that you do mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed. So the assembly members that I worked with, honestly, for what they could be doing in the private sector, the pay isn't all that good. They don't get health benefits, a lot of other benefits.
Yeah.
They're subject to all these rules. They have to hold themselves in the highest ethical standards.
Yeah.
And they still want to do this. So I just think it's really impressive the passion that they have for public service. So I can tell you that you're represented by two great legislators yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like that from the conversations I've had about them.
Yeah.
Are there any big cases right now that are in the prosecutorial phase that you can talk about, even just without naming names, that things that you're looking into?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I can't talk about ongoing cases, right? But what I can tell you is we're focused on prosecuting the most serious violations.
Yeah.
So campaign money laundering, conflicts of interest, misuse of state resources for a campaign purpose.
Sure.
And we have had major cases in the past. We've even had them up here in the North State. Just this past year, we had 8 cases. For a total of over $55,000 in violations.
Okay.
And the types of violations included non-disclosure on campaign advertisements, conflicts of interest, all over the board.
So-
And we had a case against Crystal Geyser a few years ago
Okay.
related to a ballot measure that they were trying to beat back in, I think it was 2017.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
When you talk about campaign money laundering, are you talking about, like, when I think of money laundering, I think about somebody dealing drugs or whatever. Like, how would that work in the realm of politics and politicians?
Yeah, so money laundering is, basically a method, right, that people use to trick whoever's watching their money into not knowing what the correct source is, right?
Got it.
So that's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
I'm referring to essentially funneling money through other actors, whether those are individuals or
Yeah.
those are LLCs or nonprofits, so that money can get to a specific candidate or cause without disclosing the true source.
Okay.
So kind of similar to your drug dealer, right?
Yeah.
If they're depositing money at the bank,
Right.
they don't want the bank to know that they're getting the money from their clients
Yeah.
who they're selling drugs to.
So it's interesting because we understand why a big company would want to spend money to get a certain thing accomplished, right? It would benefit their business model for whatever reason. Is there any sort of economic harm in stopping that spending? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, because whenever somebody spends, it does kind of boost the economy in some way or another. So it's like, Is there anything that could be a downside?
I think if you gave truth serum to most of the Fortune 500 CEOs and you told them they would be prohibited from making contributions to political officials, they would be like, yes.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and I assume that's the case because
Yeah.
it's like a tax.
Yeah.
Right? They feel like they need to make campaign contributions to ensure that folks who share their values, share their policy points are in office.
Yeah.
But if their competitors and other industries aren't making those campaign contributions, I would think it would be less of a concern for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a certain economy that is created by campaign spending.
Yeah.
But I don't know how big of a segment of California's economy it is. Actually, it's big for TV broadcast, radio broadcast, and then just a bunch of political attorneys and consultants in Sacramento.
Right, yeah, okay. So for you, I'm sure that this is one of those jobs where you've got your hands full, you're busy all the time. Do you have much time? I know that you're a sports fan, right? Anything else that you get to just do with your family when it's just, hey, set the job aside and this is my time?
Yeah, I'm lucky. All my sports teams stink right now. So including the Sacramento Kings. So I don't have to watch too many games. I just love spending time with my son.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky I went to UC Davis, so most of my friends from college are still up here, so we get to go skiing, we can go to the city. And we were just up here. My family was in Mount Shasta for the holidays.
Yeah.
And we got to ski on some dirt and a little bit of snow up
I
at
just went
Mount
last
Shasta.
weekend for the first time, and it was right after the snowfall. So there was actually some powder out there. It was nice. Mount Shasta's nice because it's small. The lines are small. I rented skis for like $40. This is not, by the way, an endorsement of a company. I am not violating any ethical rules here. I just had a great experience. It's such a cool place. And in fact, we were talking right before the show. We're from the same area. I grew up in Agora Hills. You grew up in Calabasas, which are neighboring towns to each other. What do you think about living in Northern California now versus where you grew up?
I love Northern California. And what's funny is, I got up to Sacramento. I was all ready to be a bankruptcy attorney.
Okay.
And then I got a call from the governor's office when Jerry Brown was governor, inviting me to join the FPPC as a fellow to the then chair, Ann Ravel. And then subsequent to that, I was hired as a prosecutor. And there's a big decision to be made. I had a girlfriend who lived in LA, right, who let me come up to Sacramento. And I was from LA. Am I going to stay in Sacramento? And I convinced her to come up here, and we love it.
Yeah, and now she's the wife.
Now she's the wife.
Oh, good. Yeah, great. I know. For me, it was a similar thing where I always figured LA is my home, and that's where my family is. And then I came up here for the job, and one thing led to another, and I fell in love with this area. There's something great about the people up here, the natural beauty, and the Sacramento airport is so much better than LAX.
Oh my God.
You can't beat that.
Yeah, flying from Burbank to Sacramento.
Oh yeah, just a breeze.
Nothing better, yeah.
Well, I so much appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. Before we wrap up, is there anything else about what you do and what comes next that you just want the average person to know?
Yeah, I would really encourage the public to take a look at our new technology that's on our website. We've completely revamped our website, so it's much more accessible and intuitive for people.
Yeah.
So if they want to file a complaint, learn more about what we do, please go to our website, fppc.ca.gov. Like I said, we're launching that new Form 700 search so they can look for potential conflicts. And I'm really excited for our legislative package. We had a lot of bills that were just introduced this past week, and we're going to be focused on more training for candidates. We're going to be focused on more transparency, so there's going to be more information for folks to look at on our website, including information related to who's paying for trips that legislators are going on. And then lastly, AI. We're really excited to start deploying a lot of those AI projects that we've been working on for the past year or so.
Yeah.
So thanks again. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, yeah, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today. I decided to offer this podcast after enough of you let me know that you wanted a deeper dive into certain stories than you get on our TV broadcasts. We elect certain people to represent our voice, but who are they really? My hope is that this podcast answers that question. I love your feedback, and I want to know who you'd like to hear from next. Just fill out that comment section and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify.